You awaken just before dawn, wrapped tightly in a worn woolen cloak, the smell of horse sweat and dried yak dung still clinging faintly to the air. The grassland around you is flat and endless, painted with the dull colors of dry autumn. Faded, ochres, grays and browns, stretching far into a misty horizon. The sky hasn't turned yet, still clinging to the last dull streaks of night. But there is no alarm, no bell. You don't need one. Your body has long since adapted to the rhythm of the steppe. Early, cold, and quiet. You're a messenger, a rider in the mighty Yam, the imperial postal system of the Mongol Empire. Beneath your saddle lies a small, leather-wrapped satchel carrying orders sealed with the Black Falcon insignia. They bear the weight of authority from someone high, perhaps a Noyan general, perhaps a Khatun queen, meant to travel hundreds of miles by your hand. You don't ask questions, you ride. The Yam is no ordinary post. It's a network born of ambition, of conquest, of empire. Genghis Khan's idea, they say, taken from Chinese influence, refined by necessity, and spread across a realm so vast it would make a Roman blush. It stretches from the Yellow River to the Black Sea. Your job is to carry one letter, one message, to a station 95 kilometers west. From there, another man, someone leaner, faster, newer, will take it further. You're just one relay, one gallop, in a long echo of hooves. As you saddle your horse, the station chief, an older man with sun-leathered skin and missing 3 fingers from frostbite, hands you a pouch of dried millet cakes and a water skin. Fast, not foolish, he mumbles, his breath fogging in the morning chill. You nod. Every rider is told the same. Don't be a hero. If the horse limps, stop. If the river swells, wait. But if you can ride, ride hard. The relay stations, or Ortega, are the backbone of this empire's bloodstream. They're positioned a day's ride apart, built near water when possible, staffed by men like the chief and his wife, keepers of fodder, guardians of maps, whisperers of rumors. It's said there are over 1,000 such stations across the land, each a tiny echo of authority, each flying the Khan's flag, each a reminder that the empire isn't just built on war, but on communication. You press your feet into the stirrups and mount. The horse, a squat steppe breed with a thick winter coat, snorts softly and stamps once. No names are given to these animals. They're tools. If you break one, they replace it. If one throws you, you ride the next. Still, in silence, you murmur thanks to the beast, a habit your mother taught you. Not out of love, but respect. The ride begins with silence. Grass muffles the hooves, the morning fog keeping birds grounded and wolves unseen. The steppe is wide and blank, punctuated only by distant herds and the occasional black thread of smoke from nomad camps. There's no road, no markers, just instinct, and sometimes a small tower of stones left by a previous rider. You know the path because you've ridden it before, and because the Yam relies on memory, not maps. 2 hours in, you stop to tighten the saddle straps. A minor ache creeps along your ribs. Last week's fall hasn't fully healed. Still, the letter must move. There's no such thing as a delay in the Yam, only failure. As the sun finally breaches the horizon, the frost on your gloves begins to melt. In your satchel, the letter, probably no longer than a page, is folded within sheep-hide parchment and sealed with wax. Its contents are unknown to you, yet its urgency is absolute. That is the nature of the system. Trust. Riders are not permitted to open or question. Your job is simple. Obey. Deliver. By midday, your first horse begins to flag. Its breathing grows labored, and you dismount before it stumbles. Not out of pity, but efficiency. A wind-sheltered copse nearby hides a cache. Each relay rider knows these spots, unmarked but remembered. You pull a bundle of dried grass from a woven bag and let the horse eat. You drink half your water skin, stretch your back, and look out across the plain. There are no trees, no shade, just the ripple of grass and wind. Somewhere far to the south lies a river, swollen now with meltwater. Crossing it may cost you an hour or more. If there's ice and it breaks, your cargo is forfeit, and that letter, whatever it contains, is more valuable than your life. Still, the yam doesn't work on bravery. It works on repetition. Each rider carries the same weight. Each rider faces the same wind. Each rider stops at the same places, eats the same millet, ties the same knots. And you wonder, as you rise again and mount, what might be in the letter? A marriage proposal, a troop order, a reprimand, a tax notice? You'll never know. But you do know that when the flag arrives at your next station, a fresh horse will already be waiting. Its coat brushed, its hooves cleaned. The next man already awake. It's not a glamorous job being a relay rider. You are not a soldier, not a noble, not a sage. But without your saddle, your satchel, your memory of the steppe, this empire would go deaf. You press forward. The wind picks up. In the distance, a hawk turns wide circles overhead, and the next relay is still 2 hours away. The terrain changes subtly, but it changes. What was once endless grassland becomes uneven underfoot. Patches of coarse gravel replace soft steppe, and your horse's gait shifts with each step. The sun is now a pale disk above you, no longer golden but silvered by cloud. The wind smells of wet stone, signaling the approach of a shallow river, the one they warned you about. Your mount hesitates at the edge. The water is muddy, slow-moving, but wide. You walk the animal carefully along the bank until you find the crossing, an old wooden plank anchored between stones. It's more suggestion than structure. You dismount, remove your boots, and test the water with your bare foot. Cold as mountain breath, but stable. The letter, always on your person, is tucked in a sheep hide pouch strapped across your chest. Even if you fall in, the pouch will float. You carry no sword, no valuables, just the satchel. That's the yam's rule. Carry only what matters. Nothing slows you down, nothing tempts bandits. You cross slowly, guiding the horse with low whistles and gentle hands. The plank creaks but holds. Once across, you don't pause. Riders are taught, don't look back. What's behind you is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the next station. Every station has a rhythm, and once you've worked long enough in the yam, you can tell how well a station is managed before you even step inside. You look for details. Are the horses saddled before you arrive? Do they have clean hooves? Are the oats dry? Is the station master awake? The next station you reach is slightly raised on a stony hill, with 3 yurts clustered together like quiet sentinels. Smoke rises from one. A copper pot of broth steams gently by the door. A horse is already tethered to a post, a folded blanket beside it. The system works. The station keeper, a woman with graying hair and sharp eyes, approaches without a word. She scans your face, your horse, the satchel. Then she nods once and gestures to the fresh mount. While she checks the wear on your saddle straps, you stretch your legs and sip hot broth from her iron cup. It tastes faintly of goat and salt. You thank her with a bow. She responds with a simple, "Ride straight," and so you ride again. The yam functions not because it is perfect, but because everyone knows exactly what to do. There's no room for ego, no innovation, no creative thinking. The empire prefers precision. Riders learn the distances by heart. 85 kilometers here, 92 there. The best riders can estimate distance by the fatigue of their thighs. You're not there yet, but you're getting closer. Mid-afternoon brings dry hills. You crest a slope and stop for a moment. Below you, the path curves westward, and in the far distance, you glimpse a narrow dust trail. Another rider going east. You raise your hand in brief salute. He doesn't respond, but that's expected. No rider breaks rhythm. You are two threads in a much larger weave. It's here, on the ridge, where you remember an older rider once told you, "The yam is like breath. You don't think about it unless it stops." You didn't understand at the time, but now, out here in silence with only your horses breathing for company, it makes perfect sense. This system, this relay, this invisible lifeline across the empire, when it works, it feels like air. When it fails, kingdoms suffocate. You descend the ridge just as your horse begins to slow. You feel the fatigue ripple through its shoulders before it stumbles. It's time to switch. A small way station is due soon, an unmanned post with food, water, and sometimes a spare animal if one's been left behind. These places aren't marked on any scrolls. Riders simply know them, passed, down by word of mouth. And sure enough, tucked between two stones, you find it. A carved post tied with red cloth, signaling food nearby. You follow the ridge trail until you see the little shelter. A roof of grass thatch, a barrel of oats sealed with waxed leather, and a lead rope tied around a weathered pine. You unsaddle your mount, give it oats and a rest, and then prepare. Your second horse, this one left behind by a westbound courier 2 days prior. You leave a note in the logbook, just 2 words. Took horse. That's all. The yam doesn't need stories. It just needs records. The afternoon passes in wind and rhythm. You begin to hum a low tune. Not a song exactly, more a pattern of syllables meant to keep you awake. Other riders share theirs around campfires, always swearing theirs is older. You know yours came from your uncle, who claimed it was Mongol, but had the rhythm of a Persian lullaby. The terrain begins to level. Again, trees return. Short, twisted things with bark like cracked leather. The grass smells different here, tinged with wild mint. You feel it in your lungs. Then, as dusk falls, you see it. The evening station. Smoke curls from the central yurt. A single lantern flickers by the entry flap. You guide your horse in slowly. This time, you're greeted by a boy no older than 12. He bows deeply, almost too much, and offers you fermented mare's milk. You take it and hand him your satchel. He disappears with it into the tent. Inside, a scribe will unseal the pouch, read the destination, and transfer it to the next courier's pack. By the time you finish your drink, someone else will be riding with your letter. You've done your part. You sleep inside the yurt that night, on a thick woolen mat near the hearth. Others come and go. Another rider with a limp, an old man delivering salt taxes, a translator moving between languages no one has heard in decades. You say little, so do they. And as you drift into sleep, you wonder again. What did the letter say? What hinges on its arrival? Whose fate rests on your hooves? But there's no answer, only wind. Dawn breaks slower in the west, or perhaps you're just more tired. The wool mat beneath you held the warmth of the fire longer than expected, and for a moment, you'd forgotten you were still in motion, even when still. But the yam does not wait for sleep. The next relay begins within the hour. Your final leg of the journey is shorter, just over 60 kilometers. The horses at this station are slimmer, bred for speed, and the landscape ahead is flatter now, more populated. Smoke threads the sky more frequently. You'll be riding toward a garrison town, a small administrative hub near the old Silk Route, where clerks speak a dozen languages and the riders are better dressed. You eat a cold cake of barley and millet, chew slowly, drink water from a frost-rimmed clay cup, and mount a new horse. This one has a crooked ear but moves like silk over stone. You've become accustomed to these transitions. Every station carries its own smell, its own rhythm. Some are welcoming, others are indifferent, but none are personal. Riders come and go like birds. They perch, they rest, and they vanish again. To be part of the yam is to know you'll never really belong to a place. You belong to motion. As you leave the yurt behind, a girl, no older than your youngest sister, runs out, holding a scarf. You had dropped it. She holds it out like it's something sacred. You thank her with a nod. No words. On this leg, the wind is from the east. It presses against your back, gently helping you onward. The sky is wide and indifferent. You pass a field where a group of children are herding goats using whistles and sticks carved with swirls. They don't notice you. You're fast. You're just part of the horizon to them. By mid-morning, you reach a wooden marker planted into a rise, engraved with 3 circles. The sign of a provincial border. You slow the horse. Ahead lies a checkpoint. Not a military one, but a customs outpost. The yam is exempt from inspection, but still, you dismount and approach slowly. A uniformed official, young, clearly new to the role, emerges from a tent with ceremonial alertness. He sees your satchel and immediately lowers his head in respect. "Messenger of the Khan," he mutters, stepping aside. There's power in this role, but none of it is yours. The yam doesn't elevate its riders. It uses them. And if one fails, another replaces him. You move forward without a word. As noon approaches, your horse begins to sweat beneath the saddle. You ease your pace slightly. The final station is near. A 2-tiered wooden structure with a crimson pennant fluttering in the breeze. A scribe waits on the steps, flanked by 2 clerks with ink-stained fingers. They see you from a distance and raise a hand in signal. You dismount slowly this time. There's no need to rush. The last leg is complete. The scribe takes the satchel, breaks the wax seal with a bronze knife, and unfolds the letter. He reads, nods, and passes it along. That's it. You will never know. What was written? It has left you. You are offered a bed in the courier's house, a communal dwelling with shared straw mats, sour soup, and a bath poured from a bucket. You accept. You strip, wash, change into dry linen, and sit beneath a window as dusk falls. The clerk beside you, chewing pickled garlic, speaks. You rode from the grasslands? You nod. He taps the letter, now rolled and tagged for dispatch via caravan. It's a list of horse feed requirements, he says. Apparently the wrong grains are being delivered north of the Orkhon, causing indigestion. You smile despite yourself. Not war, not peace, not treaties or invasions or secrets, just oats, digestive oats. And yet, somewhere, a commander's entire spring strategy may hinge on whether his mounts are fit to ride. Grain is movement. Movement is power. Even the most boring letter might carry the bones of empire. That night, you sleep again under a different roof. You dream of hooves and wind and rivers crossed in silence. When you wake, you are already assigned to a new route, this time north, toward the Altai foothills. You accept the satchel without question. You saddle the horse, which bites the air impatiently. You ride, because the yam never ends. And in that endlessness lies its power. Centuries from now, scholars will study how the Mongol Empire connected such distant lands so efficiently. They will marvel at the network, the speed, the scale, but they will rarely speak of the riders, the tired men and women who slept little, spoke less, and rode hard. You are one of them. And tomorrow your name will not be remembered, but the message will arrive. You stand at the foot of Karakoram, the capital of the Mongol Empire. Though city might be too generous a word. It is not walled. It is not grand. There are no towers that touch the sky, no domes that gleam. What you see instead are low, stone foundations, girs spread across the steppe like scattered thoughts, and wooden buildings arranged with brutal efficiency. And yet, this is the nerve center of the largest contiguous land empire in human history. The air smells of dung fires and boiled mutton. A black and gold banner snaps in the wind, marking the presence of a noble court. Somewhere behind you, a scribe in a red robe finishes sealing a letter with the tamga of Munka Khan. You don't know its exact contents, just that it is to travel to the governor of Persia, nearly 4,000 kilometers southwest. It begins here. This letter will pass through dozens of hands and hooves. But you are the first. Its origin courier, stationed within the inner circle of Karakoram's administrative corps. Your horse waits, short and strong, bred for stamina rather than speed. The roads ahead will be long, varied, and at times nearly imaginary. You tuck the scroll deep into a leather tube, capped and sealed with wax, and wrap it in another pouch against the rain. This is no ordinary delivery. Its destination is the heart of the Ilkhanate, an outpost of Mongol rule in a land of mountains, gardens, and old Persian cities. It will take months. Not you, of course. You will only ride the first stretch to the station near the Altai foothills. The Yam doesn't assign full routes to a single man. It divides the empire like lines on a hide, section by section, each rider responsible for one part of the whole. A single heartbeat in an artery that stretches across continents. You begin your ride just after mid-morning, weaving through the outer gears of Karakoram. Children chase goats along the dusty lanes. A butcher sharpens his blade on a whetstone, beside a wagon of dried fish. No one notices you, but everyone recognizes your task. The satchel on your hip marks you clearly. Messengers have rank, if not in class, then in expectation. As you cross the Orkhon River, you see the mountains rising faintly in the distance. This first stretch is relatively tame. Open land, well-kept stations, good pasture. But it is still 4 days to the point where the next set of riders will take the letter over the passes. You stop by a small way station mid-afternoon. It is a simple affair. 2 yurts, a hitching post, a stone circle for fire. The keeper greets you with an archer's nod. You switch mounts. Your second horse is thinner but well-fed, already saddled. You eat a handful of pine nuts and drink a bitter tea. The system is designed to move with minimal speech. You do not ask questions. You confirm your route with the keeper, note the weather, clear but with frost on the wind, and ride again. That night, you sleep beside a shallow creek. The stars are familiar. The cold bites your ears. You wrap the satchel in your arms and dream of reeds. By day 2, the terrain changes. The Altai Mountains begin to rise in layers, first distant and blue, then close and jagged. The grass grows patchy. The air smells of iron and stone. Your horse struggles on inclines, so you dismount often to ease its burden. The trail winds sharply upward. By evening, you reach the hilltop station. This one is manned by a family of 4. Their eldest son greets you with boiled goat and barley stew. You eat in silence while they prepare your next mount. The station master asks only one question. Is the message for the West? You nod. He nods back. That is enough. Before sleep, you look at the scroll once more, not at the words, which remain sealed, but at the tube itself. It is covered, in dust now, with a scratch along the side from where it brushed against a sharp rock. The scroll inside, though, is untouched. It carries orders, perhaps simple ones, perhaps fateful. And already it has passed rivers, mountains, and miles of barren trail. You lie down on straw, close your eyes, and think. When this letter reaches Persia, who will read it first? A clerk? A vizier? Will it be opened in a palace? A tent? Will it bring news of peace or orders of war? And why must so many hands carry so few words? By the 4th day, the letter is no longer with you. You passed it to a thick-armed rider named Temulun at the high pass station beyond the Altai Ridge. Her hair was shaved at the sides, her boots patched with seal leather, and her mare carried twin satchels, one westbound, one returning east. She said nothing when you handed her the scroll, just slung it over her shoulder and mounted with the same indifference you've grown used to. The yam isn't sentimental. You remained at the station for a day's rest. Your job was complete, but the letter's journey had only just begun. From here it would follow a slow descent toward the northern reaches of Central Asia, where roads were more suggestion than structure. The flat plains beyond the mountains gave way to salt pans, to river valleys, and to merchant trails tangled with camel caravans. Riders like Temulun weren't just fast, they had to be clever. This stretch was prone to flooding, to wolves, to bribery. The yam was supposed to be untouchable. But in these regions, local rulers, loyal in name, defiant in habit, would occasionally slow the network down. A toll here, a checkpoint there. Riders knew to carry extra coin, or sharp tongues, but the system persisted. Riders passed from station to station. Some slept in jurs, others in stone huts. One, a half-blind Kazakh elder, rode only at night to avoid the heat. Another, barely more than 15, followed herds across dry scrubland, switching between horses like lanterns on a long string of dark. Each carried the same satchel. Each passed it on with care. A week later, the letter reached Al-Malik, a trade hub along the old Uyghur routes. It passed under the shadow of apple orchards and tiled mosques, beneath banners written in multiple scripts. Here, the yam converged with other lines, merchant trails, military roads, and tributary messengers from the west. At Al-Malik, the letter was logged by a local scribe. He dipped his pen into black ink, marked the seal, noted the date, and added a single word to the registry: passing. Then it moved on. Its next rider was a Persian speaker named Jalal. He wore a fur-lined hat, carried talismans in his saddlebag, and muttered invocations before mounting. His job was to carry the scroll across the dry belly of the empire, through the lands of the Karakitai, past the old Silk Route detours, and into the domain of the Ilkhanat. He rode under moonlight when the sun grew too fierce. He shared dried apricots with a band of traveling musicians near Tashkent. He avoided a landslide by rerouting west through Samarkand, adding 2 days to his trip but sparing the satchel from damage. No one punished him. The yam allowed for adaptation, so long as the letter moved. Midway through his journey, he stopped at a famed rest point known as Ashara's Cleft, a small oasis where an ancient fig tree grew crooked beside a spring. Legend claimed that Genghis Khan himself had once rested here. Riders left offerings of horsehair and coins in the crevices of the bark. Jalal said a prayer before riding onward. Meanwhile, in Karakoram, the scribe who had sealed the original scroll likely had already forgotten it. By now he had sealed a dozen more. Orders to governors, replies from generals, logistics reports, census queries. The yam moved all of them with equal weight. The content did not change the care. 2 weeks later, the letter entered Khorasan, a region older than memory, studded with dusty citadels and wind-swept tombs. Here, it was handled by a new courier, an older man named Bahram. He rode a white, gelding and smoked crushed pomegranate leaves. He remembered when the yam first reached these lands, years earlier. He spoke often to his horse, calling it friend. When storms came, he wrapped the satchel in 3 layers of linen and buried it in a clay pot overnight, sleeping beside it under a makeshift lean-to. He lost a toe to frostbite on the road to Nishapur, but he never lost a message. The journey was not constant motion. There were pauses, delays for illness, for broken hooves, for flooded plains and closed city gates. But every delay had a protocol. The yam accounted for nature, for man, and for time. It was not perfect, but it was consistent. It did not collapse. Not yet. In Nishapur, the scroll was copied. Not opened, but duplicated in appearance. A clerk trained in the Khan's penmanship created a backup scroll to be sent by a second route, southwest through Isfahan, just in case. 2 letters now rode across the desert. Jalal's scroll, now near the Zagros Mountains, traveled slowly, slowed, by rain, by fatigue, by the strange resistance of terrain near the empire's edge. And yet, it pressed on. The yam always presses on. By the time the letter neared its destination, nearly a month had passed since its sealing in Karakoram. It had crossed steppe, mountains, valleys, rivers, orchards, salt flats, and sand. It had been handled by at least 12 riders, seen by 4 clerks, and passed through 8 relay stations. It had eaten the lives of horses and the breath of men. And still, it waited to be read. How strange, you might think, that a letter could move so far, be so guarded, and remain unread, that its content could remain a mystery while its movement was so precise. But that was the yam's strength, not curiosity, but discipline. And now, as the hills of Tabriz appear on the horizon and the smell of figs and dust returns, the satchel rests in the hands of its final rider. Tomorrow it will be opened, but tonight it is still in motion. The final stretch is quiet. From the dusty hills surrounding Tabriz, the city appears less like a jewel and more like a mirage. Flat-roofed buildings hugging the lowland, courtyards shaded by cypress trees, and domes that rise gently above the skyline like slowly exhaled breath. It is not the largest city in the Ilkhanate, but it is the beating administrative heart. Here, the orders of the Khan are read, interpreted, and acted upon. Here, the letter will finally speak. The last rider, a lean man with a stained green robe and calloused hands, rides past the gates without question. The guards recognize the satchel. There is no delay. The yam needs no introduction. His horse, ribs visible but strong, continues its measured pace down the cobbled lane. Merchants pause and step aside. A man repairing a sandal looks up and offers a respectful nod. Somewhere nearby, a boy chases a chicken through an alley, laughing. The rider does not slow. He is not part of the city. He is merely passing through it, drawn by the invisible pull of duty. At the governor's hall, he dismounts. The building is modest for its role. Painted stone, a cedar roof, a tiled portico. But its courtyard is filled with clerks. Dozens of them. Some seated on mats, others bent over scrolls, all ink-stained and squinting in the afternoon light. Their voices are low, urgent, but never raised. You can hear the scratching of pens more than the words they write. The writer is directed not to the governor, but to the chief correspondence officer, a man named Safi al-Din. His robe is striped with maroon and ivory, and his eyes carry the tired precision of a man who has read too many letters and slept through too few nights. The satchel is handed over without ceremony. Safi al-Din holds the tube in both hands, weighing it briefly, as though he can feel the kilometers embedded in its leather. He breaks the wax seal with a small blade, careful not to damage the tag, and unrolls the parchment on a polished wooden desk. It is not a grand message. It is a requisition. The military stables of the Khorasan division have been improperly supplied. The oat shipments arriving from the east have been mixed with barley husk, causing digestive issues among the war horses. The letter lists batch numbers, names of suppliers, and suggested corrective action. Safi al-Din exhales slowly. He does not mock the message. He does not dismiss it. He begins to write. He drafts a response to Karakoram, acknowledges the issue, requests clarification, and assigns one of his aides to begin investigating the supply route from Samarkand. The scroll will be duplicated 3 times, one for records, one for local administrators, one for the returning writer. The ink has barely dried when he folds it and reseals it with the Ilkhanite stamp. The original scroll is archived. It will be kept in a leather case in a shelf of unremarkable communications, next to orders for barley tax collection and a complaint about tent canvas defects. And just like that, the letter's journey ends. No fanfare, no public reading, no declaration of consequence, just ink, action, and quiet efficiency. But you, watching from the edge of the story, know better. This scroll moved the muscles of empire. 12 riders, dozens of horses, a network of strangers, all working in silent coordination across thousands of kilometers. For oats, for horses, for digestion, for readiness. Because readiness is what empires are made of. Not glory, not speeches, but the subtle things. Dry oats, timed arrivals, healthy hooves. The last rider rests in the corner of the courtyard. He eats flatbread with lentils, drinks cool water, and naps beneath the shade of a pomegranate tree. In the morning, he'll be assigned a new scroll, perhaps eastbound, perhaps not. It doesn't matter. The message moved. And so the yam continues. You leave the courtyard. The noise of the city returns. You pass a boy sweeping dust from a doorway, a woman measuring fabric by the arm's length, a potter lifting a cracked jug toward the sun. No one here will ever speak of the letter, but they will live in the empire it helped sustain. You are seated cross-legged on a worn goatskin rug inside a felt yurt near the edge of the Congai Mountains. The air is cool, and the fire in the center of the room pops quietly as smoke rises through the chimney flap. Outside, a relay rider prepares to leave. But you're not him. You are the clerk. Not all members of the yam ride. Someone has to manage the mess of it. The scrolls, the seals, the tags, the rotating schedule of horses, and the ever-dwindling inventory of dry ink cakes. You are that someone. And while history rarely remembers the clerks, the messengers remember you. You open your saddlebag, not for travel, but for inventory. Every evening you count the same items. Scroll tubes, 6. Wax seal sticks, 2 black, 1 red. A flint striker, a knife, 2 blank message sheets, camel skin, 1 ink brush, and a spindle of thread for wrapping parcels. At the bottom of the bag lies the most important item, a polished wooden tablet, lacquered dark with wear. It bears the Khan's emblem burned into the wood, a falcon in flight, wings stretched west. This emblem grants you authority. It is shown to station masters who don't recognize your face. It is placed beside the fire when official messages are recorded. It is the quiet stamp of bureaucratic power. The kind that doesn't shout, but still gets things done. As clerk, your job is strange, part scribe, part coordinator, part baggage inspector. You do not ride from station to station like the couriers, but you are often relocated every few weeks, always one step ahead of the route's failure point. You are placed where things slow down. This station is your third since the snows melted. The station master here is a leathery old man with an injured foot and 2 grandsons who do most of the labor. The younger one feeds the horses. The older one tends the ledger. They bring you millet cakes and soft cheese, and sometimes questions. How do you tell if a scroll is forged? What if a seal breaks during storm? Why do some riders carry red thread satchels? You answer simply. Not to impress, but to train. You know that yam clerks don't last forever. Your predecessor died of pneumonia outside Karakoram. The one before that was reassigned to a southern province and simply never returned. The job is not dangerous. It is merely forgotten. You unroll your logs from that day. 3 riders arrived, 2 left. 1 scroll remains in holding, misrouted, its intended recipient dead 2 winters ago in battle. You will return it eastbound next week. Until then, it sits in a side pouch labeled unclaimed. You have seen stranger 1 scroll delivered 2 years after its writing. Another rerouted 4 times before finally reaching the right family. A grieving widow who broke into sobs before you even unsealed it. Not all messages move with speed. Some take detours through history itself. You remember once discovering a pouch beneath a saddle. Long forgotten, moldy, still sealed. You burned the message without opening it. It was protocol. Messages undelivered for more than 3 seasons are considered ghosts. This station lacks proper wax. You make note of it. You also notice that 2 of the horses have fungus near the hooves. The stable boy hadn't seen it. You mark the treatment needed in the daily report. You are not a veterinarian, but you've learned enough. Riders don't check hoof rot. They check the wind. You carry the ledger to the station master. He reviews your notes, grunts once, and scratches his chin. "We'll burn sage in the stalls," he says, "and we'll boil the hooves in vinegar." You nod. A simple fix. The yam needs horses. You need movement. That night, by firelight, you inventory your satchel again. You inspect each scroll tube. Clean, dry, no signs of splitting. The red wax is slightly soft from the day's heat. You carve a new wedge for the ink block with your knife, setting the pieces to dry in a fabric pouch. Your ink brush is fraying. You note it. You will request a replacement at the next major station. And then, with quiet care, you pull out a letter of your own. It is not official, not part of the yam. It is a note for your brother, stationed 2 provinces away, running the treasury of a northern relay hub. You write to him once per season, mostly small talk, about the weather, the riders you've met, the stale cheese you keep encountering. You include a drawing of a hare that one of the grandsons gave you. You know this letter may take weeks to arrive. It may not arrive at all, but you still write it, because this is what letters are: hopes in motion, quiet testimonies of existence. You do not expect a reply. You never have. Before bed, you tuck the unofficial letter into a blank scroll tube and mark it with red thread, not for secrecy, but for visibility. It will be passed along when a writer has space. It is how all private messages travel, as favors, as gestures, as flickers in the vast machine of duty. Outside, the wind has picked up. The felt of the yurt rustles slightly. A fire snaps low. Tomorrow, a new wave of riders will arrive. Some will be late. Some will be angry. Some will be carrying news that will make men move or make them stay. You will record every name, stamp every seal, count every scroll, and then again, you will open your satchel. By the 2nd week, you begin to feel it. The pile-up. Too many riders. Not enough horses. Letters stacking faster than they move. It's not uncommon, especially after rains. When the rivers rise, everything slows. Hooves slip, crossings flood, and detours multiply like spilled ink on a scroll. You sit in the yurt with your ledger open. 3 riders hovering just outside, waiting for their turn to shout frustrations. Their horses are thin, their clothes caked with travel. One of them, an older man with deep lines at the corner of his eyes, insists that his message is urgent. You believe him, but so is everyone else. The yam doesn't recognize urgent as a valid metric. It only knows movement, logged in sequence. So you do what you always do: point to the entries, show them the rotation, issue apologies without making promises. You redirect one of the riders to a side trail, a known shortcut, and make a note beside his name. If he makes it in time, he'll be ahead of schedule. If not, well, it won't be the first time a courier lost a day to mud and misjudgment. After they leave, you check the satchel again. You've acquired more scrolls than you'd prefer, 9 in total. 3 still sealed from last week, 2 that must be copied before leaving the station, and 1 tagged with a merchant's mark, which shouldn't be here at all. You didn't authorize merchant traffic this week. That means someone accepted coin for passage. You'll need to find out who. Bribery isn't uncommon in the Yam. Not at the higher levels, but here, at the margins, the wet crossroads of empire, silver has a way of convincing tired men to bend rules, especially when it helps keep the horses fed. You report it to the station master. He sighs, says nothing, offers you a cup of yak milk, which tastes faintly of smoke and hay. That's his reply. Later, you go to the stables. 3 horses are limping. One, the chestnut gelding, will need rest for at least a week. You adjust the rotation again. Fewer horses means longer intervals between dispatches. Riders will complain, but they'll comply. You pull out your wax tablet and begin sketching the revised schedule. Arrows, names, horse tags. You build a system from hoof print and breath. It's delicate and constantly at risk of collapse. You've started marking scrolls not only by destination, but by urgency category, your own system. A triangle means supply chain. A square means troop movement. A circle means civilian administration. It's unofficial, but it helps. You've learned that the empire might run on horses, but clerks keep the legs moving straight. As you work, a child enters the yurt. A girl, maybe 9, barefoot and alert. She holds out a folded pouch. You take it. It's another private message, this one marked with a white string. Love letter. It's common. Riders fall for scribes. Scribes fall for shepherds. Shepherds fall for anyone who doesn't smell like yak. You add it to the extra pouch, the one beneath your cot, and promise the girl you'll send it with the next courier heading east. She smiles. Her teeth are crooked. Her eyes are sharp. The station has become busy by dusk. Smoke rises from 4 fires outside the yurts. Riders eat in silence. The stable boys play a stone-throwing game in the dark. You eat barley soup with dried onion and reread the copy of the supply manifest sent from Karakoram. It's inaccurate. The manifest claims this station should have received a full shipment of saddle wax and flaxseed last week. It never arrived. Either it was misrouted, stolen, or, most likely, used up by a larger station that rerouted the goods. You make a note in your ledger and copy the entire manifest again with corrections. Tomorrow, you'll send it back along the reverse line. You're not just a clerk, you're the invisible spine of the Yam. Someone knocks on the post outside. It's a courier, late arrival. His horse is foaming at the mouth and trembling in the legs. You meet him at the tether post and see that he's missing a glove. He hands you a scroll. His fingers are raw. You give him the yurt bed without a word. You sit by the fire and examine the scroll. It's official. Royal mark, sealed in triple wax. High priority. You write the entry, add it to your pile, and wrap it in linen. Then, before sleeping, you once again check your satchel. You whisper the inventory aloud. Scroll tubes, 6 wax sticks, 2 ink brush, frayed, but usable, ledger, 71 entries. This moon knife, sharp unofficial messages. 4, then you close it. Not because you're finished, but because the Yam is never finished. It happens, as it always does, not with a war, but with a silence. The rider from the western route doesn't show up. At first, it's nothing unusual. A missed day here or there is common. Storms, sick horses, a broken leg. But by day 3, the gap becomes a hole. The last scroll logged from that direction came a week ago. No arrivals, no hoof prints in the dust, no echoes. You don't panic, you check your ledger, recalculate schedules. Assign one of the younger boys to backtrack eastward with a low-priority scroll, an excuse to gather news along the way. You give him extra millet cakes and a talisman. You prepare for failure with the calm of someone who's seen it before. When the Yam falters, it does so quietly. Riders vanish into rivers. Roads become memory. Horses refuse to walk. None of it is dramatic. It's just entropy, slow and grinding. You inventory your satchel again. Your ink brush is now unusable. The bristles split. The shaft cracked. You've wrapped it in cloth, hoping to exchange it next week. Your wax supply is down to half a stick. You consider whether to use soot and oil as an emergency mix, but it stains the scrolls badly. The letters have begun to pile up again. You sit at your writing mat, copying a scroll word for word, when a messenger from the provincial capital arrives. Not a yam rider, just a local courier, hired by a governor's clerk. He bears news from the south, flooding along the Kaisel Sioux. Multiple bridges washed out, 2 stations gone, riders missing. The man hands you a list of names. You recognize 3 of them. You log the information. You fold the list and place it in the rear pouch of your satchel, where the unofficial news goes. No one orders you to do this. It's simply part of the job. Record what you can, remember what others forget. The next night, one of the horses dies. Its leg snapped after stepping in a sinkhole behind the station. The boys bury it without fuss. You mark the loss in red ink, your last usable blot. Your station is no longer operational in full capacity. You prepare a scroll for central coordination, explaining the shortages. 3 horses out of rotation, 2 stations west non-functional, wax low, ink depleted, food rations down to 5 days. It is not an emergency yet, but it soon could be. You write it with soot, despite the mess. You wrap it carefully. A rider heading east agrees to carry it. He's young, too eager, his teeth too white. He makes a joke about ghosts in the pass. You don't laugh. You give him 2 pouches, one official, one personal. The personal pouch contains your brother's letter, a new one. You wrote it that morning. In it, you mention the missing rider, the washed-out road, and a strange dream you had about riding a black horse across a frozen lake. You ask if he's heard anything about the courier schools near Bukhara. You mention that your ink has finally given out. You finish the letter with the phrase your brother taught you as a boy. Even dust has a direction in the wind. You do not know if the letter will arrive, but you send it anyway. That night, you pack up your satchel. You wrap the wax carefully, protect the empty ink block, fold the ledgers, and rebind the extra scrolls. You place them all neatly into the bag, tie the flap shut, and set it by your cot. You sit outside the yurt for a long time watching the moon rise. The yam, you realize, is not a road. It's a rhythm, and your job is to keep time. Even when the music stops, even when the ink runs dry, even when the messages pile higher than the horses can carry. The yam never ends. It pauses, it reroutes, it limps. And then one day, someone opens a satchel and begins again. You stand at the threshold of a wooden watch post, the wind tugging at the edge of your robe, dust clinging to the folds like loyal servants. The hills behind you are silent. Your horse breathes quietly at your back. The flames inside the station flicker behind taut felt flaps, but no one has called you in yet. That's because you haven't spoken the words. This is the rule here, carved into the grain of the yam system. No message may pass without confirmation. Riders do not just show papers, they speak. And those words, that simple exchange of syllables passed in the dark, can decide whether a scroll crosses an empire or dies in your saddlebag. It is not a code, not exactly. It is older, simpler. A shared phrase. A rotating cycle of verification drawn from lists kept only in the mouths of station chiefs and the ledgers of Karakoram. And you, courier of the 6th Order, are due to receive your password with the changing moon. But this time, the moon is 3 nights late. Clouds have blanketed the sky, and you've ridden faster than expected. You're early. The password in your mouth may not match the one expected on this ridge. And so, you wait. The guard inside finally pulls back the flap. He is older, with a neck like twisted rope and eyes like cold stones. His gaze moves from your boots to your belt to your bag. Then softly he speaks. Where does the wind carry the hawk? You exhale. That's the prompt. Without pause, you respond, to the falcon's perch in the west. He nods and steps aside. Just like that, you're permitted entry. No identification, no written document, only breath and syllables. It's enough. Inside, the fire is low. The walls covered in dried meat, hanging straps, and one waxed map of the valley. You offer no greetings. None are expected. You sit by the fire and remove the scroll tube from your cloak, placing it gently near the flames. The station chief eyes it, recognizes the seal, and pours you tea. The Mongol yam was known for its horses, for its riders, for the sheer speed at which it could send orders across the entire known world. But what is less remembered, what lies in the footnotes, is the vast oral system built to protect it. Because parchment could be forged, seals could be stolen. But words vanished into air, and in their vanishing they carried trust. The password system was not uniform. It shifted by region, by season, by route. In the eastern provinces, near the Yellow River, passwords often involved nature. When the grass bows, the hoof follows, a writer might say. And when the hoof stills, the empire listens. That might grant you entry. In the arid western deserts, where sand erased everything, they preferred geometry. The triangle sleeps in the wind. What wakes it? A straight line. You heard that one once and never forgot it. Some passwords involved birds. Some involved rivers. A few even referenced people, ancient generals, retired scribes, long-dead khans. But all were temporary. None lasted more than a cycle. This was intentional. The yam understood that information leaked. Station masters grew lazy. Riders grew friendly with local merchants. And so passwords changed, sometimes monthly, sometimes weekly. Occasionally, in moments of political unrest, daily. The higher the importance of the scroll, the more complex the verification. You once carried a scroll that required not only a verbal response, but also the humming of a 6-note melody, something borrowed from an old Mongol lullaby. The station master at the time wept when he heard it. He hadn't sung that tune since childhood. You later learned that his sister had composed it. There was no room for mistakes. If a writer failed to recite the password, he was detained. Not punished, not accused, just held until clarity emerged. This kept mistakes low. It also saved lives. There are tales, whispered, not recorded, of false couriers sent during border skirmishes, men dressed in yam attire, horses bearing forged seals. But they stumbled on the password, and so the scrolls never left the station. The yam kept moving. Tonight after tea, you remove your boots and unroll your bedding mat. The chief offers no conversation. He rolls a scroll of his own, a small one, likely headed west. You watch him, seal it, then tuck it into a pouch and label it with a slip of red ink paper. He then moves to the ledger and makes a notation. You can't read it from here, but you know what it says. Tomorrow you'll carry that scroll, and to carry it, you'll need a new password. They are handed down quietly, always in the hours just before dawn, in a whisper. A riddle spoken between cracked lips, remembered through repetition. No paper ever records it. Not here. Not in these outer provinces. You lie back and close your eyes. Your body aches. Your knees still burn from the incline you rode yesterday. But your mind is calm. You've done your part. And as you drift into sleep, you think of how strange it is. How words, little more than breath, carry such authority in an empire of steel and fire. But they do, because before the arrow flies, before the army marches, before the decree takes form, there is always a whisper. And in the Mongol yam, that whisper is the true engine of empire. You wake before the light changes. The felt walls of the yurt still trap the heat from the fire, and outside, the frost has begun to lace the grass in tight silver threads. It's the hour before riders stir, before kettles boil. The station chief sits cross-legged by the flame, watching it. Without a word, he gestures for you to sit. You obey. He leans toward you and speaks a single phrase. When the reed bends east, the crow returns. You repeat it once, softly. He nods. That is yours, he says, and it is done. No explanation, no reference, no formal record. You'll carry that password for the next 3 stops, after which it will expire. You will not say it aloud again until challenged. You will not whisper it for memory's sake. That's the danger, letting the password live too long in the mouth. This is the unspoken discipline of the yam's whisper chain, an oral relay that lived beside the horses, riding just as far and just as hard, and it was just as critical. In an empire spanning more than 33 million square kilometers, where a single rider could cover over 200 kilometers in a day, no parchment was ever secure without the breath to back it. You mount and ride out by twilight. Your scroll today is routine, a weather report from the valley fields 2 provinces south, intended for a grain commissioner near the Oxus. It seems insignificant, but if that commissioner fails to prepare for flood season, an entire month's grain for 4 provinces could be lost. Words, again, bearing weight. As you ride, the phrase repeats softly in your mind, not on purpose, but in rhythm with the hoofbeats. Reed bends east, crow returns. You imagine the reed, soft and swaying, and a black bird wheeling in a blue sky. That imagery is how the passwords stick. They're designed to live in pictures, not syllables. You pass 3 waypoints before midday. At each, you dismount, present your satchel, and wait. The challenge comes, where does the fire hide in winter? Your reply, without pause, in the reed that bends east. The man nods, and you are waved through. The full phrase doesn't need to be spoken at every checkpoint. It's modular, broken down. Sometimes just a keyword is needed. You've been told this was an old trick from steppe shamanism. Symbolic, language passed in pieces, known only to initiates, now repurposed for state security. You stop to water your horse at a stream and remember a story your old station trainer once told you. He said the passwords used to change with the direction of the wind. When it blew west, the passwords used birds. When east, rivers, south, flowers, north, bones. It was probably a myth, but a beautiful one. That same trainer had taught you to speak passwords only once a day, aloud, to yourself in private, like prayer. He called it feeding the words. Writers believed the phrase could decay if left unused too long, just like a forgotten saddle or a rotting rope. So you whisper it now, once, softly. When the reed bends east, the crow returns. A crow calls overhead. You ride on. At your midday stop, a junior scribe mistakes you for a soldier. Your belt bears too many straps. She asks for the seal. You show her the satchel but offer no badge. Only the words. She hesitates, but then recites the counterphrase without meaning to. Then let it fly where the trees are few. You smile. She smiles. That's the beauty of the whisper chain. It lives in people before it ever touches a scroll. By late afternoon, you reach your station for the night. A 2-yurt relay perched on a grassy bluff overlooking a dry riverbed. The wind here is stronger. The yurt canvas flaps as you tether the horse. The station keeper here is older, his beard like gray brush, his voice gravel. You offer the password. He frowns. That one's due to change tomorrow. You nod. You made it just in time. He takes the scroll, reads the seal, and places it beside the fire. 15 of these this month, he mutters. Everyone wants to know if the barley will drown. You say nothing. He pours you mare's milk. It's sour, warm, and perfect. Later that evening, you sit by the fire and trace the ash on the stones. You think about all the passwords you've carried. One's about dew, one's about bones, one's about invisible mountains and silent wolves. Once, a password involved a joke, just 3 words. Don't trust goats. The counterphrase? Only if they sing. You remember laughing. The station keeper didn't. You've often wondered who writes them. Is there a scribe in Karakoram tasked only with dreaming up riddles? Or are they whispered by elders, passed through lines of oral tradition now pressed into bureaucratic service? No one tells you. No one knows. But you suspect the true purpose of the password system isn't just security. It's memory. In a network where scrolls move faster than news, where lives are brief and riders go unnamed, the password is what lingers. It connects the man to the task to the land. A phrase might be spoken by 30 mouths in 3 days, then never again, like wind over grass. Before sleep, you burn 1 broken piece of wax from your pouch and whisper the phrase one last time, letting it drift into the smoke. Tomorrow, the phrase will change. Tomorrow, the crow will not return. The next morning, the sky is mottled with soft clouds, a gentle wind rustling through the pale grass. You stretch beside the embers of last night's fire and pack your gear in silence. The station keeper is already awake. His grandson, a boy of perhaps 10, is feeding grain to the fresh horses. You finish tying your scroll satchel and approach the keeper. He looks you over, then gestures you close. You lean in. He whispers the new phrase for the day. The turtle walks faster than the river flows. You repeat it slowly. He nods. And if they ask for more? You ask. He raises 2 fingers. Then you answer, but only when watched. It's an odd one, but not the strangest. You've heard phrases involving snoring yaks, suspicious, camels, and once, a particularly poetic metaphor involving moonlight and soup. This one, though, feels weighted, like it came from somewhere real. The keeper hands you a wax-sealed scroll. It bears no symbol, just a small knot of twine tied around the center, dyed blue. You recognize it. Internal routing. This scroll isn't meant for administrators or generals. It's a test message, part of the system's internal diagnostics. Every few months, the YAM sends out a batch of dummy scrolls. Harmless content, but tracked rigorously. If one is lost, it triggers reviews. You'll be carrying this one through 3 stations to verify that every checkpoint responds properly to the password cycle. You mount your horse and ride out with the words in your mouth. As you travel, the wind feels lighter, almost playful. A pair of cranes cross overhead, their wings beating in slow rhythm. You pass 2 riders going east. One raises a hand, the other doesn't see you. The first checkpoint comes just before noon. It's a smaller outpost, manned by a younger official, who watches you carefully as you dismount. You show him the satchel, say the words. The turtle walks faster than the river flows. He replies instantly, but only when watched. You nod. He offers you dried pears and a small leather pouch of bitter tea. The whole exchange takes less than 2 minutes. It works. The system still hums beneath the dust. At the next station, an older woman mans the entry. She hesitates after your phrase, frowns slightly, then shrugs and waves you through. No response. You mark it mentally. That's a flag. If she's forgotten the return phrase, the test scroll will identify the breach. Not a disaster, but not ideal. By evening, you reach the final checkpoint. A weathered stone post with a tarp stretched over 3 iron stakes. The keeper here is asleep when you arrive. You tie your horse, wait, and eventually cough. He stirs. You repeat the phrase. The turtle walks faster than the river flows. He looks at you blankly, then narrows his eyes. What river? Your gut tightens. He doesn't know the phrase. He's not stalling. He's genuinely lost. You attempt the counter phrase softly, but only when watched. Still no reaction. He steps forward. I wasn't told of any turtle. There's tension now. Not hostility, just confusion. He glances toward your scroll tube. You sense what's about to happen. He asks to inspect it. You refuse. This scroll isn't for him. You're not authorized to share its contents. That's the test. If a station tries to open a scroll without clearance, it's logged as a breach. He frowns. I need confirmation. You offer to wait. Suggest he send a runner to the next station for verification. He doesn't like that. He's tired, cold. Probably hasn't received a scroll in 2 days. His frustration bubbles. You remain still. The yam trained you for this. Eventually, he relents. You sit under the tarp while he prepares a fire. He mutters about changing orders, poor communication, and riders who never carry proper documentation. You sip your tea, hands still, face unreadable. You know what this means. The whisper chain has broken, at least here. Whether by negligence or miscommunication, he wasn't updated. He might not even be at fault, but the scroll will record it. And somewhere in Karakoram, someone will read your notes and mark this checkpoint for retraining. Before you leave, you quietly write a short message into your ledger. Checkpoint 3, failed to complete counterphrase. Writer challenged. Scroll unopened. Trust withheld. You don't name the man. You never do. The yam doesn't punish individuals. It corrects, processes. Back on the trail, the night deepens. Stars spread like grain over black silk. You recite the phrase again. Not because you need to, but because you want to remember it. The turtle walks faster than the river flows. You wonder who wrote it. Perhaps it came from a childhood fable. Or maybe it's just nonsense designed to test the memory of tired men. Either way, it worked, or rather, it showed where it didn't. The next morning, you deliver the scroll to the auditing clerk, stationed in a valley garrison. She breaks the seal, reads the symbol, and nods. Then she records your route, your notes, and offers you a bowl of salted rice. You eat in silence, body aching from the ride. Later, you overhear her dictating a report to her assistant. Third checkpoint, failed passphrase response, she says, flatly. Recommend station rotation or full retraining. Rider adhered to protocol. Scroll intact. That's it. No fanfare. No accusation, just a system correcting itself. You leave before midday, headed back east. Your next assignment is unknown. Perhaps a routine message. Perhaps another test scroll. Perhaps something real. Orders, grain reports, order updates. It doesn't matter. You'll carry it. And when they stop you at the next station, when the flap of the yurt lifts and a stranger steps forward, you'll wait for the question. And you'll answer it, because that's what the yam is. Not just horses, or messages or maps. It's people. People who remember the words when paper is lost. People who speak trust into the air and wait for someone to echo it back. And long after the roads fade, the scrolls rot, and the names are forgotten. Perhaps the whisper still lingers. The first time you ride this stretch of land, you wonder how anyone calls it a road. There's no packed earth, no markers, no worn grooves left by carts, no stones stacked as boundary. Just grass. Grass in every direction, low, sun-bleached, rippling under the wind like threads on a loom pulled too tight. This is the northern edge of the Ordos Plateau, and it is the very opposite of a highway. And yet, this is the road. You are not the first to ride it, and you won't be the last. In fact, you are one of hundreds, perhaps thousands, whose hoofbeats, day after day, mile after mile, will shape the path not with construction, but with repetition. The Mongol yam does not pave roads. It makes them not through labor, but through motion. Your horse knows the direction, not because the animal understands geography, but because it smells where others have gone. It feels the subtle press of worn paths hidden beneath the grass. It senses the slope of land where wheels once stuttered and riders leaned. The Mongol postal routes were not carved out with shovels. They were pressed into existence by centuries of hooves, wheels, breath, and time. And it starts with people like you, the quiet architects of a moving road. Your orders this week are simple. Ride from the Tool River Post to the Western Pasture Hub near the Riverbend Station. It's a mid-grade assignment, about 120 kilometers over semi-soft terrain. No official roads, just yam markers and instinct. You carry 3 scrolls, 2 sealed with wax, 1 open for review along the route. That one contains a grain dispatch, schedule meant to be amended, and pass through 6 stations before reaching a final auditor. You tuck it beside your bread pouch. There are no signboards here, no mile markers, but there are clues, and you've learned to read them. The faint. Tracks of hooves worn into the soil. Patches of broken grass bent slightly west. Even the dung tells a story. Camel droppings mean caravans passed recently. Horse dung, fresher, means couriers. The path builds itself, not through design, but habit. You pass a yurt tied with red string to its central pole. A yam approved. Stop. Not a full station, but a recognized rest point. Inside, an old woman with knotted hands pours you sour milk and asks no questions. She has hosted dozens of riders, perhaps hundreds. Her floor is smoothed by dusted boots. Her hearth, stained with ancient soot, smells like every fire you've ever rested beside. You ride again before the sun climbs high. At one point, the grass disappears, and the land becomes crusted with salt. A shallow, dry lake, crossed annually, but avoided after storms. You dismount and test the ground. Solid. Your horse steps carefully. Every 10 meters, you tap the earth with your heel, a habit passed down from a failed rider whose story ended in a cracked leg and 3 lost scrolls. You remember him often. The route curves toward a rock outcrop marked with charcoal lines. Mongol way signs, drawn like stars and birds. They point westward. You follow. And the road, if it can be called that, begins to reveal itself more clearly. Not as a trail, but as a pattern. The grass thins. The ground firms. You ride slightly faster. By midday, you stop beneath a crooked tree known locally as Horse's Elbow. Every rider knows it, not because of its shape, though that helps, but because of the ledge beneath it where food is sometimes hidden. You find a small cloth bundle tied with twine. Inside, dried turnip, rice crackers, and a note. South winds strong, avoid reeds. Signed only with a letter. Tea. You eat half and leave the rest. It's part of the etiquette here, the unspoken pact between riders. Share what you can. Leave what you don't need. The road is built not just by steps, but by generosity. You pass the halfway point in the late afternoon. The land begins to rise slightly, not enough to be called. Mountains, but hills that roll like swells on a sea. Your legs ache. The horse snorts more often. You slow. Here, you notice something else. The ash piles, small scattered remnants of old fires, buried but not hidden. You dismount and brush one with your gloved fingers. Warm. Someone passed here, recently. You estimate within 12 hours, you're close to another courier. Not long after, you see them. A rider descending the opposite hill, slow and careful. You both raise hands in silent greeting, pass with a nod, and disappear behind your respective ridges. No words, none needed. This road is made of movements, not conversations. You reach the pasture hub just before dusk. It's not a station, but a rotating herder outpost. 3 yurts, 6 horses grazing, and a pot already bubbling over a fire. The men greet you with yawns and gestures. One offers you fermented mare's milk. You trade a scroll for a bowl of barley mash. Here, the road breathes. Herders have shaped this stop into a crossroads of sorts. Not officially mapped, but known. You log your time in the station book, using charcoal on pressed bark. You list the scrolls received, the condition of the horse, the state of the road, firm, dry, clear. Your handwriting is cramped but legible. You share your open scroll, the grain schedule, and ask for updates. A man named Batu points out a change. Rain delayed the third shipment. You correct the entry. Your job is not just to move messages. It's to maintain the living record of a road that doesn't exist on any map. Before sleep, you sit outside and look back eastward. There is no trail visible. No flags, no stones, no posts. But you know, the road is there, because you just wrote it. You made it real, with hooves, breath, sweat, silence, and tomorrow someone else will follow it. The next morning begins not with sunrise, but with sound. You're woken by the steady thunk of hooves on packed earth. A rider arriving from the north, dismounting just beyond the yurt flap. You sit up, stretch, and hear the brief exchange of voices outside. The language is clipped, efficient. A scroll is handed over. A water skin is accepted. That's it. Another beat in the rhythm of the road. You rise and step into the morning air. It's cool, dry, and laced with the smell of boiled grain. Riders have already begun preparing their horses. You recognize one of them, a courier named Senge, who once shared your fire near the Orkhon crossing. You nod. He returns the gesture. In the Yam, this is as close to reunion as anyone expects. You eat barley mash with a slice of dried peach and refill your water skin. Then you saddle your horse, check the leather straps for wear, and roll your blanket with the practiced ease of repetition. There's no need to check your map. You don't carry one. No one on this route does. Instead, you carry memory. The Mongols mapped their empire not with ink, but with stories. Every landmark has a name, even if it doesn't appear on a scroll. Riders speak in phrases like, "past the stone that hums," "where the grass flattens westward," or "three crests beyond the shadow hill." These are not poetic metaphors. They are instructions. Today's stretch follows the Limping Horse Line, named for a stretch of land where a legendary courier broke a stirrup and walked 5 miles alongside his injured mount. The tale is told around fires, half as warning, half as pride. You've ridden this stretch before. The land looks empty, but you know better. You begin your ride. Within the first hour, you cross a dried-up stream. There's no water now, not since spring, but the reeds still mark its bed, a sharp bend to the right. You follow it, watching for the tufted grass that grows in 2 patches just past the bluff. That's your next marker. As you ride, you think about how the Yam works without roads. You remember what your instructor once said: a road is just the memory of movement. He meant that paths are created by people who choose to walk the same ground again and again, until the earth itself gives in. That's how the Mongols did it, with repetition, not construction. There are 3 main kinds of road on your route: the grass press, high use, flat terrain where hooves have bent the grass over time. The track is visible only if the sun hits it at a certain angle. To the untrained eye, it's just field, but you know to look for the color: pale, sun-faded streaks, where no one plants and everyone passes. The rut line usually appears on clay or compacted earth, shallow tracks where wheels and hooves have worn the topsoil. Risky during rain, they become mud trenches, but ideal in dry weather. You ride in these now, feeling your horse adjust its stride to match the rhythm. The ghost line, the most dangerous. Routes known only by oral tradition. No signs, no tracks, just a sequence of turns and stops past rider to rider. You once got lost on one for 2 days and survived on dried apricots and melted frost. Today, you ride the rut line. It's dependable this season. The last rain was light. The sun is out. You make good time. Around midday, you spot a cairn, a waist-high pile of stones with a strip of red cloth tied to a branch. An old tradition, predating even Genghis Khan, meant to mark turning points, holy places, or warnings. This one marks a split in the trail. You dismount, circle the cairn clockwise 3 times, and leave a pebble. It's superstition, but no one in the Yam ignores it. You choose the southern branch. This trail winds along a shallow ridge, then dips into what used to be a marshland, now dry but cracked and unreliable. You test the ground often. Your horse steps carefully. Somewhere near the center, you find another clue. A circle of flattened grass and charred bones. An old fire. Someone camped here recently. You press on, now watching the sky. Circling birds indicate herds nearby. Livestock, perhaps. That means people. And people mean you're on the right line. Eventually, you pass a shepherd's shelter. A low, stone-walled hut roofed with grass and hides. Empty. But the presence is enough to reassure you. This route is in use. You pause for water and to check your satchel. 3 scrolls. One feels slightly damp. You unwrap it. No damage, just condensation from your water skin. You rewrap it, this time sealing it inside a spare pouch. These little details matter. A scroll smudged with water becomes unreadable, and unreadable messages break systems. Before remounting, you notice something small, a feather tied to a stick planted beside the trail. You recognize it. That's a directional signal left by riders when stations are uncertain. The feathers, tilt and placement indicate to passers-by that a northern station is non-operational, and riders should continue to the southern post 12 kilometers away. You adjust your route accordingly. The sun begins to sink behind a low hill. You ride slower now, watching for landmarks. You spot a tree known as Three-Fork Elder, even though it has 5 branches. That's the joke. But it's also the marker that tells you the next ridge will reveal your night post, a semi-permanent camp used by grain runners. You crest the hill and see it. 3 yurts, a half-finished fence, and smoke rising from a dung fire. You arrive and dismount. A woman named Oyun greets you. She wears a thick red shawl and calls for her son to take your horse. You hand her the scrolls. She checks the seals. Her fingers are stained with wax. This station isn't official, but it's respected. Built by an old Yam veteran who retired and set up a place for couriers to rest. His son now runs it. No ranks here, just routine. You eat stew with millet, drink tea that tastes of smoke, trade news in short phrases. Then you sit and log your day. The Yam doesn't need full reports, but you write clearly, grass press stable, rut line clear, northern post unmarked, possible failure, scroll 2 repacked due to condensation. This goes into the logbook, which will travel back east with the next returning rider. These entries don't make history, but they make the system. They shape the next rider's path. Before sleep, you walk the perimeter of the camp. Stretch your legs. Look back the way you came. There is still no road, but you know exactly how to return, because you are the road, and the road remembers. The morning greets you with a thin frost on your saddle and silence in the air. No birds, no wind, just the occasional pop of a cooling fire. You eat quietly, half a millet cake and dried turnip slices. Your host offers a second helping. You refuse. The next rider might need it more. You saddle your horse with practiced hands. Every strap, every buckle, every fold has a place. Riders aren't taught to hurry. They're taught to never repeat a movement twice. Efficiency in motion builds speed over distance. The road remembers this too. Today's stretch will complete your loop. A return to the Tool River Post, closing the circle. This isn't an uncommon assignment, but you write it differently now. Not just as a courier, but as a cartographer of motion. You're here to remind the land where the road lies. You ride out at first light. The land, once again, appears featureless. The trail is still unmarked. You rely on nothing written, nothing built. Instead, you navigate by feel. The tension in the horse's legs, the slight give of the soil, the temperature of the wind brushing your face from the northwest. These are your compasses. You begin with a long, straight stretch known to riders as the whisper line. It runs parallel to a dry riverbed and earned its name because, in windless weather, you can hear your horse's breath louder than your own thoughts. This morning, it's true. Each hoof fall lands with soft certainty. Your mount knows this stretch. Well, the memory of dozens, maybe hundreds, of similar rides lies beneath every step. In the Mongol Empire, horses are trained by terrain as much as by riders. They remember routes long after humans forget. At the halfway point, you reach a shallow basin marked by a peculiar feature, a lone standing post. It's a remnant of an old station, abandoned after a flood redirected a stream. The post is no longer used, but riders still pass it. It's become part of the oral map, a fossil in the Empire's bloodstream. You dismount here, not for necessity, but for ritual. You walk the horse around the post once clockwise, once counterclockwise. It's a custom you were taught early, an act of remembrance, not religion. Riders once camped here. Horses once fell here. Scrolls were once passed hand to hand under this very shadow. You nod to the post and continue. As you ride on, your thoughts shift. You think of all the people who have helped create this invisible infrastructure. The boys who mend bridles, the women who boil milk for passing riders, the scribes who correct, maps that no one ever sees. The road exists not only in the grass, it exists in them. The Mongol Empire didn't build with stone. It built with obedience, rhythm, and horses. Even the placement of the relay stations was determined not by geometry, but by effort, the distance a horse could travel in a day without strain. Some stations were placed closer if the terrain was harsh. Others spaced farther when weather allowed. The network was flexible like the riders themselves. And yet, for all its flexibility, the yam was reliable. You think of that now as you descend into a low stretch where two trails split. One older, deeply rutted but waterlogged, the other newer, wind-packed and narrow. You choose the newer line. The choice isn't instinctual, it's observational. The older route has begun to decay. Too many hoof prints made it mud. The newer one is being taught. You, now, are its teacher. The Mongols understood this. Roads are not permanent. They are taught into the land, like a story repeated until the grass believes it. And like any good story, they must be told again and again. At mid-morning, you cross a field where blue cranes nest this time of year. You slow your pace. The birds watch you but do not flee. This is another marker. You've ridden here before. A rider once told you the birds only gather in years when the soil is dry. That turned out to be true. You logged it in your old satchels. Side flap. Details like this become part of the system. Not officially, but functionally. The next station is a half shelter near a crumbling cliff wall. It has no guards, no clerks, just a ledger box and a feed trough. You leave no scrolls but write your name in the ledger, followed by a brief note. New trail east of basin, holding firm. Recommend continued use. Older path near standing. Post soft, avoid if wet. It's enough. These notes will be read by someone who reads quickly. Riders don't pause long enough for prose. You refill your water skin, eat a date, and ride on. The final stretch is the trickiest. A gentle valley known for dust storms that appear without warning. As you ride, the wind begins to stir. You smell it before you see it. A metallic sharpness, a dry breath across the back of your neck. You pull your scarf up, tighten your cloak, and press low. The dust rises in sheets. Visibility drops. But you keep riding. You trust your horse and your memory. The path here curves left around a rock outcrop shaped like a wolf's paw. You don't see it, but you feel it. The tilt of the land changes slightly. The air flows differently. You turn left. It works. Within 5 minutes, the wind dies, and the haze lifts. You dismount to shake the dust from your satchel. One of the scrolls has come loose from its strap. You rewrap it carefully, checking the wax seal. It's unbroken. Good. You adjust your gear and ride the final slope toward the Tool River. The station comes into view. 2 yurts, 1 stable, 3 tether posts, and a flag bearing the yam emblem. A hawk in flight over the grass. You arrive. The clerk greets you with a nod. She is new. You don't know her. She doesn't know you. But you speak the current password. She answers correctly. You hand her the scrolls. She logs them without comment. You take off your boots. Eat hot grain porridge with pickled plum. Rinse your face. Later you sit by the river and watch another rider arrive. His horse is dusty. His eyes are red. He carries a scroll you once passed through your own hands a month ago, back near the Orkan crossing. You say nothing. He doesn't recognize you, but it's there. The quiet acknowledgement between links in a chain. You helped shape the road. He just followed. Tomorrow, someone else will follow yours. The yam doesn't need signs. It doesn't need stone. It needs riders, hooves, breath, memory. You were never meant to be remembered, but the land remembers you. And that is enough. The scroll was sealed before the battle had ended. In a canvas tent pitched beneath a ridge east of Nishapur, the general dictated in clipped Mongolian, barely pausing between thoughts. His voice was hoarse. His armor still smelled of smoke and blood, but the message had to leave now. Outside, horses screamed in the distance, not in pain, just confusion. The air was still thick with dust. Bodies still lay where they fell. But the scroll could not wait for silence. The Empire moved faster than cleanup. You were already saddling your horse when the scribe finished tying the ribbon. The general didn't look at you. He simply gestured, once down the valley, away from the hills toward Baghdad. No one said the word urgent. No one had to. You tucked the scroll beneath your tunic, wrapped in oiled hide to protect against dust and sweat. Then you turned south and rode. You are not a soldier. You carry no sword. You don't even know exactly what the scroll says. Something about a flank collapsing. Something about false reports from a scouting party. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it reaches Baghdad before word of the battle does, because the Empire depends on speed, not just of arms, but of information. This isn't your first time riding ahead of rumor. You once rode from Herat to Ray in 4 days, narrowly beating a merchant caravan spreading false news of a tax revolt. Another time, you delivered word of a flood to Samarkand, 2 hours before the waters reached the trade quarter. That saved 7 warehouses of grain. That's what the yam was designed for. Today, it must do something harder. Reach the capital before fear does. The terrain out of Nishapur is kind at first. Long, flat stretches between scrub hills. Your horse, a lean black gelding, responds to your touch with practiced ease. He knows this rhythm. You let him run. By midday, you've passed 2 minor relay huts. Neither has riders, just logbooks and troughs. You stop only to water the horse and dip your hands in a basin. Then back to the saddle. Dust follows you like a second cloak. In the distance, The Zagros Mountains darken the horizon. Baghdad lies beyond them. You know the way. You've never seen the scroll's destination. The House of Records, an administrative wing near the caliph's old palace, but you've delivered there 3 times before. Each time they barely looked at you, but they always opened the scroll. By the second day, the rumors are already moving. You stop at a larger yam station on the Karkay River. 3 riders are inside, resting. One of them, a heavy-set man with cracked lips, is already telling a version of the story you just rode from. They say the left wing broke in less than an hour. Commanders ran. Even the banners fell. You don't speak. You water your horse, sign the ledger, and ask for a change mount. The clerk frowns. Too soon, he says. Rest an hour first. You show him the seal. His eyes widen slightly. He nods, stands, and calls for his apprentice. The apprentice brings a pale mare with alert eyes and bruised flanks. You mount, nod once, and ride. Behind you, the fat rider continues his story. The details change with every sentence. You ride into the foothills by nightfall. The mountain air cuts sharper. You wrap a scarf around your neck, adjust the blanket under the saddle, and press forward. The yam route over the Zagros is a twisting climb. 12 switchbacks, each marked by a stone cairn no taller than your knee. The horse climbs slow but steady. At the halfway point, you pause by a spring known as the silent mouth. You feed the horse a mash of grain and salt. You eat dry lentils and chew a strip of fig paste. You do not light a fire. Messages like these draw attention. And in the mountains, attention gets you killed. By the morning of the 3rd day, you're across the ridge. The descent is faster, trees thin. Villages begin to appear, distant dots of smoke and sloped roofs. You pass 2 shepherd boys who stop to stare. One waves. You don't wave back, there's no time. The next station is near an orchard. A woman with no eyebrows runs it. You've heard stories, burns from a house fire, they say. She gives you hot broth and a dry saddlecloth. She does not ask what's in the scroll, but she checks your eyes before you leave. Riders lie. Scrolls. Don't. You make good time on the lowland paths. By afternoon, the rivers bend westward. You follow a trail lined with acacia. A group of traders, donkeys and woven mats, moves aside as you pass. One of them calls out, "Is it true they lost Nishapur?" You don't answer, because you don't know, and because you're not here to answer. You're here to arrive. At the final station, 12 miles from Baghdad, you get your last horse. The station master hands you a message copy receipt, already written, already sealed. You ask if the message has arrived yet. He shakes his head. "No rider from Nishapur's come through," he says. "You're first." Good. But that means you're racing more than rumor now. You're racing panic. You press your heels to the new mount and ride. The road to Baghdad is stone, finally, a true road. Wide enough for wagons, flanked by shade trees. Banners flutter from watchtowers. Soldiers nod as you pass. One of them raises a hand, begins to speak. You don't slow. The walls appear before sunset, a dull gold in the failing light. Dust clings to the brick. The city is quieter than you expect. Caravans still, gates half open. Someone's waiting. You ride through without challenge. In the central quarter, you dismount before the House of Records. A boy in a red tunic takes your reins. A clerk appears at the gate. You hand her the scroll. She breaks the seal immediately. No questions, no speeches, just action. She disappears into the corridor, scroll in hand. You sit on a stone bench, rub your knees, drink from the jug beside the door, and breathe. Because the message got here, and the news, for once, did not beat it. The sun has dipped below the Tigris by the time you're summoned again. You're led through a side gate at the House of Records, your boots trailing dust onto polished tile. The clerk from earlier, now flanked by two quiet officials, guides you down a corridor lined with tablets, sealed scrolls, and scent lamps that burn with something like clove and dried moss. The scroll you carried is gone, already unrolled, already dissected. You expected this. Messages like these don't linger in satchels. They live briefly in the writer's hands, then evaporate into decisions. You're not debriefed. You're not thanked. Instead, you're handed a new scroll. Fresh, wax, pale green seal, lighter than the one you arrived with. This one isn't writing ahead of news. It's confirming it. Signed by an administrator, bound for Karakoram. You nod, not because you understand the contents. You never do. But because the seal means you're already late. You rest for less than an hour. Enough time to eat dates, refill your water skin, and rub salve into your knees. A groom brushes your horse. A scribe checks the straps on your gear. You know the rituals. They speak less here, but they still care for the rhythm. By nightfall, you ride again, this time north, tracing the path back into uncertainty. You leave behind the warmth of the lamps, the quiet hum of prayer chants from upper towers, and the softness of a city that doesn't know what's coming yet. Baghdad is calm, for now, but it won't stay that way. You're riding now with confirmation, which means something did go wrong near Nishapur. The message you carried was not a false alarm. And the moment this new scroll reaches the central Yam administrators in Karakoram, responses will begin. Troop movements, grain diversions, supply, stockpiles. Everything depends on when it arrives, so you ride as though speed is oxygen. You make it past the first station before midnight. The attendant is asleep in the outer hut, scrolls hanging in bundles from his belt like onions. You don't. Wake him. You don't need anything. Your horse is fresh, your satchel tight. You log your time and keep moving. This part of the Yam route is known for its quiet, not because it's uneventful, but because riders know that sound attracts. Wolves, bandits, curiosity. You ride in silence, even when the saddle creaks, even when your thoughts grow too loud. By the second day, you're halfway across the plains east of the Tigris. You stop once to change horses. The new mount, a dusty dun with alert ears, is fast but nervous. It snorts when you mount, but settles after 2 minutes of rhythm. You offer it a palmful of salt. Riders in the Yam believe salt builds trust. Whether it's true or not, you keep offering it. At the next station, a clerk recognizes you. "You came from Nishapur, yes?" she asks. You say only, "I came from the house." She nods, glancing at the seal. That's all anyone needs. On the third night, you meet another rider traveling west. He's carrying scrolls from Karakoram. You both stop, exchange brief glances. He gestures for food. You hand him a strip of pressed fig. He gives you water. No words. Just riders moving in opposite directions, each carving separate truths into the same empire. When you depart, he raises a hand. You return it. It's a small thing, but it keeps the web together. By the fourth day, fatigue settles into your bones. You feel it in the way your back curves more than it should, in the tightness behind your eyes. You sleep for 20 minutes at a station perched between two broken hills. Just enough for a dream. In it, you're still riding, but the horse is silent. The wind doesn't move. The world listens. You wake with your hand already on the reins. By the time you cross the desert flank of the Amudarya, you begin to see the signs of disruption. Farmers standing by dry fields. Caravan guards watching the road too closely. A burnt-out wagon half buried in dust. No blood, no bodies, but enough ash to know that someone wanted something stopped. You don't investigate, you log the location in your ledger. That's the Yam way. Record. Don't interfere. At the next stop, you hand the note to the clerk. She reads it, writes a small flag beside it, and seals it in her own scroll. It'll move east alongside yours. Every rider sees a little. Together, the Yam sees everything. On day 5, you reach the high plains south of Samarkand. A sandstorm had passed through the night before. The route ahead is blank, the ground smooth. No tracks remain. You hesitate, but only for a moment, because you remember the markers. There's a slope where a single acacia tree leans east. Past that, a pair of stones, one flat, one pointed. Then a dip in the trail where your horse's hooves should echo if you're on the right path. You find the tree, then the stones, then the echo. You ride forward. Even the wind cannot erase the Yam. Your final day before the major hub at Otrar is the hardest. The horse you switch to has a limp. Minor, but enough to jolt your hips with every third stride. You adjust. Wrap cloth around the saddle horn. Lean slightly forward. Sacrifice comfort for speed. You pass 3 stations in one push. At the last, a teenage boy offers you roasted chickpeas. You thank him with a half bow. He looks proud. Perhaps this is his first interaction with a long route rider. You were that boy once. By nightfall, Otrar rises ahead like a mirage turned solid. Fires, tents, wagons, flags, and a relay tent painted with the Yam symbol. Black ink on white linen. You ride straight to it. The attendant sees your satchel and waves you through. Inside, 3 clerks sit on woven mats. One gestures, you hand her the scroll. She reads the seal, then disappears into the main chamber. You sit, breathe, and wait, because now the Empire knows. And once it knows, it will move. You sit in the corner of the tent, your back pressed against a stack of folded rugs, still warm from the sun. The wind outside has calmed. You hear only the crackle of a fire pot and the occasional cough of one of the clerks. The scroll is no longer with you. It's somewhere behind the curtain in the main chamber. Now unrolled, read aloud, measured by eyes trained to translate urgency into action. You imagine a map being consulted, pebbles moved on a board, timetables drawn, names spoken, your part is finished. And yet, in a way, it's just beginning. A clerk approaches. She offers tea. Not sweetened, not spiced, just heat and liquid. You accept. Her eyes linger for a moment. A glance not of suspicion, but of silent appraisal. Riders are always being assessed. For truthfulness, for fatigue, for how long they'll last before they break. She doesn't ask questions. She just leaves you alone. That, in the Yam, is respect. You rise after a short rest and stretch beside your horse. The stable hands have brushed it down, checked the hooves, and left it tethered beside a watering trough. Otrar is not the final destination, but it's the point where the message becomes machinery. Messages that reach this hub do not die, they multiply. They are copied in triplicate for generals, governors, archives. They are summarized and translated. Couriers like you carry the originals. Others now carry the consequences. This one message, this tightly written account of a failed maneuver outside Nishapur, will likely result in rerouted grain caravans, redeployment of soldiers, and perhaps even a reshuffling of commanders. It will echo through decisions that no citizen will connect to a tired man on a horse. But you will know, as you saddle up to leave, you're handed a short scroll, lighter, sealed in red wax with a courier's mark. This is your return route instruction. You're to swing northeast through a series of minor outposts, gathering local reports on troop readiness and Yam capacity. Essentially, you become the question instead of the answer. The Empire never lets a rider go back empty. Your route takes you through dry gulches and scrubland. Small posts tucked beside rocky ridges. At each, you deliver your line. Courier returning from southern high-priority run. Reporting on post condition. Some stations are bustling, others barely functioning. At one, the only station keeper is a blind woman who asks you to dictate your report aloud, while she inscribes it from memory using a stylus on wax. You comply. At another, a young boy tries to hand you a personal letter. You're not allowed to. Accept it. But you remember his face, his eagerness, the quiet hope in his voice. You take the letter anyway. It's addressed to a cousin in Samarkand. You'll hand it off unofficially. All writers do. That's how the real web spreads. Through kindness, not command. At a midpoint outpost near the Sir Daria, you hear what's become of the original message. A scribe, drunk on rice beer, lets it slip that commanders in Karakoram are meeting to draft new deployment orders, that troops from the north are being reassigned, that messengers have been sent to the Ilkhanat, that the southern routes are being closed to trade for a week. You say nothing, but inside there's a small warmth. Not pride, just purpose. A message that rides ahead of news is more than parchment. It's a turning point with a saddle. On your final day before return, you cross a wide plain known among couriers as the Quiet Line. No stations, no shelter. Just 5 hours of straight riding under endless sky. This is your favorite part, because out here, you can think without expectation. You think about the first message you ever carried, a forgotten ledger request. You think about the storm you outran near Bukhara, the wolf that followed you for half a day in the Tian Shan foothills, the old man who once handed you a scroll and said, "This will outlive me, ride fast." You think about how the Yam has no monuments, no statues, just worn saddles and memorized names, and the soft trails of hooves that vanish after a week. But somehow the Empire still remembers you, not by name, not in words, but in how it listens. You arrive at the Central Review Station at dusk. It's larger than most, permanent structures, tiled roofs, officials with badges. You hand in your scrolls, receive your inspection token, log your miles. A clerk reads your notes in silence, nods, then hands you a sealed envelope. Inside, a strip of silk marked with 3 black lines, the symbol for ride completed, duties fulfilled. You're done. For now. You don't ask for rest. You don't ask what happens next. You just tether your horse, remove your boots, and sit on the bench under the outer awning. You close your eyes and let the Empire move without you. For a moment, because even the Yam breathes. And for one night, so can you. You are not a rider. You haven't left this valley in 7 years. You haven't seen the capital since your beard was black. And if you're being honest, you don't miss the saddle. Your job is here, at a station between nowhere and somewhere. Else, tucked along the bend of a shallow stream where horses drink without coaxing. And the sun hits the stables just right for drying saddles. You're a Yam stable keeper, one of dozens across the steppe, who make sure the horses don't die and the riders don't fall apart before the next station. Your world is not scrolls and seals. It's hooves and hay. The day begins before the sky remembers light. You rise when the crickets stop and the wind changes direction. A signal even the animals seem to follow. Your back aches, but the movement is automatic now. You pull on your boots, grab your brush, and step outside. There are 11 horses in your care this week. 3 new ones, brought in just 5 days ago by a northern rider who barely spoke and left before you'd even touched the reins. The rest are familiar. Sturdy steppe breeds, shorter than Arabians but stronger across rough terrain. You greet each one. By name? No, you're not sentimental. You use numbers, not just for organization, but for detachment. Riders get attached to animals. You don't have that luxury. They come and go too quickly. Horse number 3 has a cracked hoof. You noticed it yesterday and wrapped it in cloth soaked with pine resin. You check it now. The swelling's down. Good. He might be ready by the week's end. You boil barley in a dented copper pot while you muck out the stalls. There's no glory in this work. No banners, no praise. But when a rider comes flying down the ridge, throat dry, legs numb, and scroll pounding against his ribs, you'll be the one waiting, with feed, water, and another mount ready before he dismounts. That's the Yam way. Mid-morning brings your first rider. She arrives fast, too fast. Her mare is lathered with sweat, the saddle slightly loose. You frown before she even stops. You don't ask questions. You just move. You catch the reins before the animal can spook. Guide her to the shaded trough. Begin unbuckling the straps. The rider, breathing hard, hands you her satchel without a word. Her face is burned from the wind. Her hands shake slightly. She's on a hard run. You nod toward the second stall. Becker 6 is fresh. Feeds in the saddlebag. Water's cool. She nods and disappears behind the fence. You rub the mare's neck. Whisper a word you don't remember learning. Just rhythm. Then you untie your feed sack and pour oats into the trough. The mare eats. She'll be fine. You walk the line, check the other horses. Rotate feed. Refill water. You think about that rider. Young, maybe 20. She'll reach the river post by sunset if the weather holds. If she doesn't, then you'll hear it 2 days later in the form of another rider, carrying 2 satchels instead of 1. That's how news travels in the Yam, not just in scrolls, but in absences. The afternoon is quiet. No riders, no visitors, just the steady sound of horses breathing, the creak of leather drying on the post, and the faint hiss of your tea boiling beside the fire. You sit by the stable door, sharpening a hoof knife, and think you weren't always a stableman. You used to ride. Long routes, winter rides, night rides. You once delivered a scroll with 3 broken ribs after falling from a frost-slicked cliff. You didn't get a medal, just another route. You stopped riding after your leg gave out. Not from a fall, from time. Now you stay. Some think of it as retirement. You don't. You work harder now than you did then. There's no rest between riders. No days off, just weeks of feed, sweat, wind, and repetition. But you prefer this. The animals don't lie. By dusk, another courier arrives. This one's older, slower. His voice carries. He jokes while dismounting. Calls one of the foals prettier than my last wife. You laugh, despite yourself. He doesn't stay long, drinks a bowl of salted broth, asks if you've heard any updates from the southern ridge. You haven't. He shrugs, mounts, and leaves, whistling a tune you half recognize. You walk over to the station ledger and record both visits. Date, time, horse issued, feed used, condition of saddle, rider's name if given. Somewhere, this record will travel. Not soon, not urgently, but eventually, someone will read it. That's how the Yam builds memory. Quietly, repetitively, one brushstroke at a time. Night falls, you walk the stable row again. Horse number 8 needs brushing. Horse number 2 kicked the trough over. You write it. Refill it. Rebrush. You sit beside the fire with a pot of thick barley gruel. Eat slowly. Listen for hoofbeats. None come. But that's the thing. When the Yam works best, it feels like nothing is happening. No drama, no shouting. Just the quiet exchange of speed and reliability. You lie down near the stable wall, straw under your shoulders, one hand resting on a bag of feed. You drift off to the soft, rhythmic sound of horses shifting in the dark. And you know that somewhere out there, another scroll is moving, because you kept its path clear. The first 2 riders of the day arrive early. They don't speak. Just hand. Over reins, splash water on their faces, and switch horses. You log their times, adjust the cinch on one saddle, and hand the older one a ball of dried meat. He chews it like paper and nods once before galloping on. By mid-morning, they're gone, and the yard is quiet again. You clean the hooves of the returned mounts and brush their manes. One kicks lazily. You ignore it. Routine. You've seen worse. In the Yam, every station waits. The whole system is built on waiting. For hooves, for riders, for scrolls. But sometimes the wait stretches too long. That's when your job changes. That's when you're no longer just a stableman. You're a question with no answer. It starts with a missing sound. By noon, you know something's wrong. The mountain rider, who left at dawn, hasn't returned. He was supposed to be back within 4 hours. His run was only to the watch post at the southern ridge and back. You check the ledger again. You didn't misread. He left at sunrise. He should be cresting the ridge now. But the ridge is empty. You wait another hour. Still nothing. You walk the corral, check every post, check the water. Then you do what no one wants to do. You prepare the emergency horse. The Yam has protocols for this. Silent ones. They're not written anywhere. They're passed down from station keeper to apprentice, whispered over fires. When a rider doesn't return, you wait 1 hour longer than the maximum window. Then you choose a horse. Not your fastest, but your strongest. One that knows the land and won't spook. You pack a coil of rope, a flask of salted water, 2 strips of seal meat, a second satchel. You tie your station ring to your belt. If you're found dead, they'll know who sent you. You don't carry a scroll. This isn't a delivery, it's a search. You ride slow. The trail is steep, shaded, and lined with loose stone. You follow the route the rider should have taken. Up the ridge, across the creek bend, along the slope of the fire tree. You find the sign half an hour in. A strip of cloth caught on a thorn bush. Blue. From a Yam tunic. You dismount 30 paces. Beyond, you find the horse, alone. Bridle tangled, saddle torn, no rider. You find him 20 minutes later, half conscious, beneath a ledge. Broken leg, eyes sunburned, lips cracked. He says nothing, just stares. You pour water into his mouth, slowly. Not too much. Then you wrap his leg with your blanket and use the rope to pull him onto the emergency horse. It takes an hour to get back. By the time you return to the station, he's asleep, feverish, breathing shallow. You call the nearest messenger boy, 12 kilometers east, and send him with a scroll marked red. You stay by the rider's side all night. You don't know his name. You don't ask. The next morning, another courier arrives. She needs a horse. You help her saddle up. She doesn't ask what happened to the other rider, but she sees the blood on your sleeve, the missing blanket. She rides in silence. That's the Yam way. Everyone notices. No one speaks. You clean the injured. Rider's gear and hang it on the wall. You burn the torn saddle. You log everything. The injury, the missing hour, the time of return. No excuses, only facts. Later, a low-ranked inspector arrives. He takes your report, asks 2 questions, then leaves without eating. The rider survives. Barely. A week later, a different courier passes through carrying a scroll with his handwriting. He's back on the line. You nod when you hear it. Then you muck the stalls and boil the barley. The station still needs you. The road still moves. They rarely thank you. The riders. Some do, with a nod, a gesture, a muttered blessing before dawn. But most simply pass through. Their hooves hit the packed dirt. Their breath clouds the cold air, and their scrolls vanish over the ridge. You refill the troughs, mend the saddles, wipe the dust from the ledger board. You do it again, and again. without praise, without pause. And still, the system holds. Because someone has to be the stillness between the motion. You've been at this station so long you can't remember who manned it before you. There's no plaque, no records. Just faint initials carved into the wooden feed post. You run your fingers over them sometimes, wondering whether the man before you did the same. All you know is this: you were trained by a woman named Oko. Short, stone-faced, hands like knotted roots. She said little, watched everything. Her rule was simple. The horses eat before you, always. You followed that rule every day since. Your station is not large. One yurt, a stone-walled stable, a fenced corral, and a small shed for salt and dried feed. The nearest city is 2 days west. The nearest proper town, 4. You don't go. You haven't left in years. The yam doesn't require you to. What it needs is this: a warm animal, a bucket of water, and a man who knows how to keep, both standing until the next hooves arrive. It sounds easy, but it isn't. The real difficulty is the rhythm. Riders don't come in neat intervals. Some days, you'll see 7 before breakfast. Other times, you'll go 3 days with only wind and the sound of your own steps on frozen ground. And you must be ready for both. If you run out of barley, the next mount may falter 10 kilometers later. If your saddle blankets are damp, the next rider may develop frostbite on the thighs. If your ropes are frayed, a restless mare might bolt, and the scroll with her. So you maintain, always, even when no one's watching, especially then. The young riders don't understand at first. They arrive with cracked lips and blisters, too proud to ask for help. They toss their reins like coins, speak fast, eat faster, leave faster still. But then, one winter, a snowstorm hits. The trail back ices over. The next station doesn't answer. The rider waits here. 3 days, you feed him, wrap his feet in dry wool, sharpen his knife for him. No words. On the 3rd day, the snow breaks. He leaves without goodbye. 3 months later, he returns. Drops a pouch of dried apricots on your table without looking up. That's the closest thing you'll get to thank you. And it's enough. The empire moves through these silent links. A rider arrives. A scroll changes hands. A horse drinks. A stamp hits wax. A man disappears over the hill. Multiply that by 10,000 times across 10,000 hills. Now imagine it breaking. One missed scroll, one empty trough, one injured horse, and the whole web begins to fray. You know this because you've seen it. Last spring, a mudslide cut the southern pass. 3 stations failed in sequence. Scrolls backed up. Riders rerouted. One arrived at your post after riding 30 hours straight. He fell off the saddle and broke his wrist. You fed his horse, cleaned his cuts, sent the scroll onward yourself. Stayed 2 nights, didn't speak. Just watched the fire. You keep records. Neatly. You use charcoal on pressed bark. Each scroll logged, each feed bag weighed. You note the wind, the soil firmness, even the noise of birds. It matters. You once predicted a rider's delay because the swallows came late in the season. It turned out to be true. The scroll still arrived. Just later, the station is your world. You speak to horses more than people. You talk to tools, out loud, as if they remember their last use. You know which wooden bucket leaks and which one sings when you pour. You have 7 pairs of boots, each for different seasons, none without holes. You've named the stars above your tent, but not the horses. Never the horses. They don't stay long enough. Some nights, when there are no riders, you walk the trail for an hour in each direction. Not far, just enough to check the ground. You remove fallen branches, stamp down gopher mounds, leave a strip of cloth on the cairn to mark frost. No one told you to, but someone will notice, and they'll keep riding. Your hands are rough now. Always. Have been. But lately, they ache more when it rains. You wrap them in lambskin at night. Doesn't help. Still, you can saddle a horse in under 3 minutes, even blindfolded. You've tried, just to know. You get 1 letter a year, from a brother far west. Married. 2 children. Always the same paper, same ink. You reread it when the wind howls too loud. Then you put it back in the ledger drawer and go check the salt. You are not a name in history. You are a pair of hands behind a trough. But when the empire counts what kept it whole, it should count you. Because scrolls don't ride horses. Riders don't boil barley. Maps don't refill buckets. And empires don't last on glory alone. They last on the man who wakes before dawn to check the hooves. Welcome to your nightly escape into the